you know, you don't begin to act yourself. Now, if I can go back, I know somebody in here used drugs at one point. But I haven't, but I've understood some of them that have. One thing about a drug is you have to get it. It's nothing about it. You will steal, you will connive, you will run over people, you'll do everything you can to get the word. Why don't we do like that in church? Why don't we fight to get the word? Why don't we really go after the word of God? I constantly hear we say we get good word. And yes, we get good word. But just getting good word doesn't get me past the impossibility. John wasn't just talking about some mere words on a page. He was talking about let it get down in your spirit where it begins to change you. And you end up coming out of yourself and end up becoming what the word says. See, y'all should have shouted again, because let me tell you something. If we would be honest, some folks would have got jumped on, but it was the word getting in your spirit that kept them off of you. It's the word. He was saying the word. Then he went on down 14, said, and the word became flesh. And see, that's the problem that the Greeks had a problem with, because to them the word was just a language. It was just how we felt like it was. It was like it was telling us how the universe came about. That's the way the Greek language was. But when John starts talking about and the word became flesh, they begin to look at him because that's simply impossible. How can mere words become flesh? And then it said it dwelled among them. How can the word get in you and dwell among you? And then the final definition means that, hey, once it gets inside of you, it begins to change after you heard it. That means when the word has been changed, it really gets in you, it begins to change at the time you hear it. Just like medicine. The medicine doesn't begin to work after you feel better. It begins to work when you take it. And that's the same way the word. The word's just not to excite me so I can say, ooh, I got a good word. Let me stack up my CDs. Got more CDs in your car and don't have a bitter word in your life. CDs coming out the door. It's more than just CDs. It's supposed to get inside my spirit and begin to change me. Begin to transform my mind. At some point, you ought to see a difference. My prayer life ought to be different. Me reading the word ought to be different. There ought to be a difference when the word gets in me. What does that word cause me to do? Come here, sir. What the word, he's going to represent the word. And what the word does, here's how we do the word. We take the word, and I want you to go where I'm going. This is what we do. We pull the word and make it our own agenda. Huh? Yeah, If I don't like something you did, I'm bringing the Mr. Word here to tell you. And the Bible said you shouldn't do this. Well, how come you didn't show up on time? Don't you read your word? That is not what the Logos is talking about at all. Amen. What it means is, you begin to walk and I'll follow you where you walk. It means I line up. Doesn't mean he line up to me. I'm lining up. See, I'm lining up. I don't control where I go. I'm lining up with him. See, that goes beyond just quoting scriptures and saying stuff. Now I'm lining up. Now, why is it so important for me to line up? Now I just stepped into the possible mode. I'm a possible candidate now. I'm a possible to receive the glory of God. I'm in the possibility now. What was impossible now has turned into possible. Thank you, sir. By the word of God. By the word of God. Now, when you look at Mark's version, the text in Mark, it begins to say, hey, if you believe, all things are possible. And what happened here, what it was the disciples, the man brought his son to be, he was demon-possessed. And he took him first to the disciples. And disciples couldn't cast him out. And they began to argue. Had a little argument. So Jesus, the man said, look, let me go to Jesus. He said, I brought something to you, and your disciples couldn't cast him out. You ever been somewhere and you had the saints to pray, the so-called saints to pray, and they prayed and nothing happened. It didn't get any better. It got worse. Actually, it was too much information. Now your information, everybody in the church know, and your child ain't no better, all just more news. Now it's on Facebook and Twitter, on CNN, all that stuff now, and all you did is want somebody to pray for your child. Now you got in a real rut. This man brought his daughter to be delivered. How tragic it is to bring somebody to church to be delivered and they got to walk out bound. Why would I come to church if it's for the deliverance? See, I don't come just to play games and look at you. I come for a hope. I come for a deliverance. I come to get set free. I didn't come to show off my suit. I came for a change. Could it be sometimes people need a deliverance in the church, and because we've played so many games, they got to walk back out, and they're asking a question, why wasn't that person healed? Why wasn't that